You're in the middle of a conversation right now. Not this one, a different one. The one that's been running in your head since you woke up this morning. The internal monologue, the mental commentary, the little narrator inside your skull that won't shut up even when you desperately want it to. You didn't choose to have that voice. It was just there when you became conscious enough to notice it. And here's the thing nobody really stops to consider. That voice, the fact that you have language at all, that you can form a thought into a word and push it out of your mouth and have another human being catch it and understand it, that might be the single most consequential accident in the history of life on Earth. Not fire, not tools, not the wheel. Language, because every other achievement came after it, and arguably because of it. The question is, when did it start? And the honest answer is that we don't fully know. But what we do know is stranger and more fascinating than most people realize. Let's start with the problem. Language doesn't fossilize. Bones do. Tools do. Cave paintings do. But a word, the moment it leaves your mouth, it's gone. It disappears into the air and leaves absolutely nothing behind for an archaeologist to find 50,000 years later. Which means trying to figure out when humans started talking is like trying to figure out when humans started laughing. You can't dig up a laugh. You can't carbon date a sentence. So scientists have had to get extraordinarily creative about finding indirect evidence. Shadows and echoes of language, buried in bones and brains and genetics and the tools people left behind. And what they've found is genuinely remarkable. Here's where it gets interesting. Let's talk about the hyoid bone. Deep in your throat, sitting just above your larynx, there's a small horseshoe-shaped bone called the hyoid. It's unique in your skeleton because it doesn't connect directly to any other bone. It just floats there, anchored by muscles and tendons, and it plays a critical role in the complex muscular choreography that lets you speak. Without it functioning correctly, you can't produce the full range of sounds that human language requires. Now here's why that matters. In 1989, archaeologists excavating Kabara Cave in Israel found something extraordinary. A Neanderthal hyoid bone, roughly 60,000 years old, in near-perfect condition, and when they analyzed it, its shape, its structure, its biomechanics, it was virtually identical to yours, to a modern human hyoid. Morphologically, there was no reason a Neanderthal couldn't have produced speech. The hardware was there. And then in 2013, researchers went further. They used high-resolution CT scanning and computer modeling to actually simulate the biomechanics of that Neanderthal hyoid under load. The results suggested it functioned in essentially the same way as a modern human one, which raises an immediate and uncomfortable question. If they had the equipment, were the Neanderthals talking? We'll come back to that. Because first, we need to go deeper, much deeper. But the throat is only half the story. The brain matters just as much. Two regions specifically. Broca's area, which handles speech production, Wernicke's area, which handles comprehension. Damage Broca's and you understand everything but can't get words out. Damage Wernicke's and words come out fine, but they're complete nonsense. These two regions are the core architecture of human language, and here's the remarkable part. They leave impressions on the inside of fossilized skulls, and when researchers examined skulls from Homo heidelbergensis, a species that predated both us and Neanderthals by hundreds of thousands of years, they found the same left-side language dominance that modern humans have, which pushes the neurological groundwork for language back to nearly 500,000 years ago, before our species existed in its current form. So the brain was getting ready long before anyone was sure what it was getting ready for. But here's the piece of evidence that genuinely changes the picture. The FOXP2 gene. In 2001, scientists identified a gene called FOXP2, which became known almost immediately in the press as the language gene, which is an oversimplification, but not entirely wrong. Mutations in FOXP2 in humans cause severe difficulties with the fine motor control needed for speech and with grammar processing. It's not the only gene involved in language, but it appears to be a critical one. When researchers sequenced the Neanderthal genome and looked for FOXP2, they found it. Not just any version of it, the same modern human version of it. Identical, which means Neanderthals shared at least this key genetic component of language capacity with us. And the common ancestor we shared with Neanderthals, who diverged from our lineage somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 years ago, likely had it too. The genetic groundwork for language was being laid before the split, before Neanderthals were Neanderthals, and before we were us. Now here's where we have to slow down and make an important distinction. Because having the capacity for language and actually using language are not the same thing. A piano has the capacity to produce Beethoven. That doesn't mean everyone who owns one is playing it. The anatomy, the neurology, the genetics, these things tell us the instrument existed. They don't tell us the music was playing. For that, we need to look at behavior, specifically symbolic behavior. Here's the working theory that most researchers now operate around. Complex language and symbolic thinking are deeply linked. If you can use a symbol, an object, or a mark that that represents something other than itself, you're doing something cognitively that's closely related to what language does. A word is a symbol. The sound dog doesn't look like a dog, smell like a dog, or feel like a dog. It just means dog, because we all agreed it does. That's symbolic thinking. So when we find evidence of early humans using symbols, ochre markings, shell beads, deliberately arranged objects, we're finding evidence of minds that were potentially capable of language. The oldest unambiguous symbolic behavior we've found dates to around 100,000 years ago in South Africa. Ochre processing kits, shell beads used as personal ornaments, deliberate engravings on pieces of ochre. But then there's a site in Morocco called Bismone Cave, where researchers in 2021 found shell beads dating to 150,000 years ago, and a cave in South Africa called Blombos, where ochre engravings have been dated to 75,000 years ago, with associated symbolic artifacts pushing older. The symbolic mind appears to have been flickering into existence across a long, slow dawn rather than switching on all at once. And then around 50,000 years ago, something accelerates. Cave paintings, bone flutes, sculptures, elaborate burials, long-distance trade. The archaeological record doesn't gradually fill up, it floods. And most researchers believe this is when fully modern language crystallized. Not just sounds, but grammar, tense, fiction, the ability to say what if, to warn someone about a danger that isn't there yet, to plan a hunt that hasn't happened, to tell a child about a predator using only words. That's not communication, that's civilization in seed form. Which brings us back to the Neanderthals. The hyoid bone, the FOXP2 gene, the brain impressions. They had eagle talon jewelry, pigment, possibly cave markings. Something was happening. But their symbolic record is thinner, less connected, less explosive than ours. Close to the full system, but probably not quite it. Not the storytelling engine, not the what-if machine. And then, they were gone. And we were here, talking. The biological groundwork was centuries in the making, shared across multiple human species. The symbolic spark began flickering 100,000 to 300,000 years ago, and then something clicked. The full system came online, and everything that followed, every technology, every civilization, every idea, came at a pace that had no precedent in the prior 2 million years of human existence. Every word you know traces back to a moment we can't precisely locate, when someone made a sound that meant something, and someone else understood it, and neither of them had any idea what they'd just started.